Welcome to Uncaged, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today we have Shani Shoham on the show. Shani, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Shani has an incredible background, very focused and a lot of experience, I would say, in the early stage sales and marketing area. He has really quite an impressive background working with VC-backed and being a VC himself, supporting companies as they develop their operations. Currently, he is the Chief Executive Officer of 21. He is also the Chief Operating Officer of Weka. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. Weka.
Excellent. And Shani's going to talk to us a little bit about those things, but really broadly, the area of early stage growth and how do you make it happen and all the tricks of the trade that he applies. But before we get into that stuff, tell us a little bit about your background and your career so far.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm currently the CEO of 21, which is a company that does autonomous testing for mobile applications. I'm also an advising CEO for Weka, which is a late-stage venture-backed, high-performance computing company. Prior to that, I was the president and CEO of a Lightspeed venture-backed company. I joined the company as employee number 6. Raised 2 rounds of funding and grew the company from the first 5 customers to over 100 customers, 1,600 leads every month, and over 40 employees. As you might have guessed based on the accent, I'm originally from Israel. I'm an engineer by background. Kind of halfway through my undergrad, I made the transition to the business side, and I spent most of my career with software companies, kind of leveraging my technical skills and business experience. So I said I can talk well enough or I can talk to a CTO at an expert level, but you don't want me writing any lines of code. I moved to the US from Israel about 12 years ago to go to the Stanford Graduate School of Business, spent most of my career since, managing sales and marketing organizations. I consider kind of my core skill is the ability to lead sales and marketing organizations and kind of have the same level of depth and knowledge around the 2 domains. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later today. I've managed sales reps, SDRs. I've built, sales organizations and comp plans on the one hand, but then on the other hand, I also build demand plans, content, SEO strategy, drip campaigns. And so kind of a wide experience around both sides.
And I think that, when people have that type of a range of background like you do, where you can work and understand and probably translate some of the work that's being done by the development teams and see where there perhaps are weaknesses, maybe also even key strengths. And then you're able to apply that into the sales and the revenue and the growth strategy. I mean, I think that's really where the magic happens. Tell us a little bit how that's working with the efforts that you're putting forward at 21.
Yeah, so it's most of the organizations I see. I think the biggest challenge is again the disconnect between sales and marketing. Again, marketing talking about leads and MQLs and stuff like content syndication, and then sales really cares about pipeline and opportunities and deals. And so you kind of see organizations on the one hand, from both sides of the equation. I can do marketing activities that, and we're doing that at 21, where we spend more time qualifying those leads before we hand them over to sales. So when we hand them over to sales, especially the SDR team, they get much more context. They can personalize the messages, etc. And so that's just one example of things that we're doing at Weka and at 21. At Weka is has an interesting challenge because the qualification process really requires us to talk to leads in order to know whether they're actually a good fit. And so it's not that I can qualify them based on technographic or demographic like most companies. And so one of the things we came up with is we're doing about a webinar every 2 or 3 weeks. And during those webinars, we'll actually ask the participants poll questions, which will help us through the qualification process. So for example, we'll do a webinar around GPUs, and we'll ask them where they are in the, whether they use GPUs or not, or where they are in the journey to adopting GPUs. Again, a GPU is not something that I can, get from LinkedIn or get from some kind of Zoom in for Discover. So, but for the SDR and for the sales organization to know that someone has GPUs, makes the follow-up process much more personal and much more contextual, which means that the likelihood that they will convert is much higher. And so, so that's just one example around how sales and marketing
Shani,
works together.
yeah, Shani, I mean, if you were to provide advice to, let's say, like a early stage growth company that is, they're dealing with that challenge that you're talking about. Sales is doing one thing, the marketing efforts are connected, but perhaps not optimized. Where should they start?
So 2 suggestions that I would have is, first of all, hire a CRO. I think that's kind of why the role of the CRO has emerged. I think today, kind of the life cycle from lead to opportunity is much more tightly coupled than ever before. And I think the role of the CRO is to kind of make sure that those 2 departments communicate with one another. The other thing that I like to do is I like to have my marketing team join sales meeting. I think that, especially for me, while I focus on kind of the sales aspect of it and understanding the challenge of the customer and kind of how our product can address that need, they focus on listening to the language that the customer uses and the way that he describes his challenges, and then they can use that in their content marketing. They can use that in in their collateral. And so so I find that, again, one way to bridge that gap is to actually have the marketing department join sales calls as much as possible. I typically when I hire, whether it's a sales rep or a marketing person, I typically on the first week I have them join a sales call so they can listen in.
So it's an interesting one, being an entrepreneur myself and going through the and also an individual that came from the advertising and marketing world before I decided to be a tech entrepreneur. I have lived and I've seen that stress between the efforts of really kind of what maybe brand focused marketers talk about, which is the storytelling, the brand value, the education, and then the performance marketing efforts. The performance marketing efforts being really geared towards generating leads, shortening the time that a lead is a qualified lead to a close, and really managing that funnel efficiently. How do you bring those areas together?
Yeah, great question. I think historically marketing organizations were very focused on again measuring themselves based on leads and maybe based on MQL. And one of the things that I see is today's marketing organizations measure themselves more on kind of how much pipeline they've generated, how much of that pipeline actually went into sales pipeline. They measure themselves on sales qualified meetings, and so again they measure themselves on things that are further down the funnel. I think part of that is marketing and sales became much more analytical practices. There was much more data available, and so you can really analyze and measure things that previously you couldn't measure. So another example of historically, again, marketing organizations would probably be more focused on bringing leads and doing content syndication, etc. When the pandemic happened, there were no physical trade shows. You couldn't really meet people in person, and so you had to figure out a way to get in front of them. And so one of the things we started doing was virtual events, gathering a small group of highly qualified leads that we really want to get in front, and do some virtual wine tasting or some virtual, pasta making or whiskey tasting, those sort of things. And again, this would be considered an activity that historically sales organizations would do. A rep in his territory would gather a bunch of prospects and customers and bring them together. So again, I think that's part of the shift that you're seeing. Marketing today is juggling between top of funnel activity and mid and down the funnel activity. And again, the down the funnel is very, very tightly coupled with what sales is doing.
So it's a really great question, and I love those examples of virtual events. I'm just upset that you didn't invite me to one of those pasta making sessions. That sounds amazing. But as we now shift again into a world, I don't want to jinx ourselves here, so I'll knock on wood.
Yeah.
But that we're stepping out of a little bit of this pandemic phase and we're moving into this new post-pandemic phase. What are your thoughts? Do you think that you'll go back to events, or how are you going to continue to will you continue to use these virtual experiences?
Yeah. So first of all, I think there's still a long way to go until we go back to having thousands of people at an AWS summits, cramped in a small hotel. So one, I think that that's there's still a way to go. Two, I think the pandemic actually proved us that we can do things differently and essentially question some of the things that we're doing. For us, making a transformation to digital experiences really proved itself. I have to say, with about a third of the budget that we would historically spend, we're seeing better ROI. We're seeing an increased number of leads, MQLs. Our pipeline has increased 10 times what it was prior to the pandemic. And again, we're spending less because we're being more efficient. A virtual event, a virtual wine tasting costs about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000.
Right.
Going to a trade show, with flights and shipping equipment, etc., you're talking about probably 5 times that amount. And so again, I think that we're probably going to be a little more balanced in terms of the digital experience versus the physical experience. And again, there's still a bunch of things that we did during the pandemic that will play a big role. So we invested heavily in SEO. We've seen traffic to the website increase 3 times, and organic traffic increased over 6 times.
Wow.
That's something that will sustain and we'll keep doing. And again, it wasn't a huge cost center for us. Another thing that we did during the pandemic that was very interesting, and again, I'm going to throw out some ideas potentially to my competitors, but that's fine. We did a survey, so we asked our database of thousands of leads, a set of questions. We got a couple of hundreds of responses, and based on that, we developed a proprietary survey. And what that gave us a lot of insight to what, not kind of what's the marketing buzzword and what people say that they're doing, but what they're actually doing.
Right.
And so now we can leverage a lot of that insight in discussions with prospects and with customers, and we can tell them, if they're far behind or not, and what they should really be doing. And plus, again, it also gives us that qualifying information that I referenced to earlier. And so that's
incredible. That's incredible growth that you're talking about. And I do see that as being something that we see a lot with kind of strongly digitally based solutions, tech-based solutions. Over the last year, they've had a lot of growth, and they've been applying some of these tactics that you're highlighting. Were there any things that emerged during the last year and during the pandemic, new channels that were particularly interesting to you?
Um, I mean, we definitely started seeing, we definitely started doing more webinars, and so when the pandemic happened, kind of the easiest thing to do was to do webinars because we could literally spin that in a matter of 3 weeks. A lot of the webinars we did were actually more in the format of fireside chat, very similar to the one that you and I are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to produce, doesn't require a lot of preparation. And the nice thing is you can then repurpose the content in multiple ways. And so, you can clip that into, shorter sections. You can transcribe that and write a blog post based on that. So there's lots of ways that you can massage that content and repurpose. So that's something we really started doing quite often, and I think it
Yeah.
worked very well.
No, I think that's been a very powerful one, and certainly I think that some companies seemed to get that, get how to utilize that. Others seem to shift over and try some of these new channels. I just was curious if you had experimented with Clubhouse or any of those
Uh,
things.
yeah, we didn't actually. Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's something we never really got around to experimenting. So
Yeah, no
definitely an
worries.
interesting idea.
It's something new, and I think that what you're highlighting is almost like the power actions, right? Like SEO at scale, doing that correctly is very, very powerful. Content marketing at scale, very powerful. And now kind of I think the addition of this kind of web content that you're talking about, very, very powerful, and definitely cut through. And clearly, if you're getting 10 times growth, you're doing something right.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I think the other thing is, kind of the pandemic really highlighted, it puts all of us in kind of this awkward position of, you're working from home, you're worried about the health of your family, etc. And so it emerged the opportunity of being more personal and kind of, show some empathy to your prospects. So again, the virtual, wine tasting, for example, or the giveaways that we would send to prospects weren't really just about the sales aspect of it. It was also about, just showing some empathy. And so I think, again, one thing that did emerge out of the last 12 months was not just focused on sales, and again, people have different things on their mind. During a pandemic, they feel like they feel less secure. They worry more about their family. Some days are better than others, and so and just like you and I are probably on Zoom calls all day, and so there is an opportunity to show some empathy, to give someone a break, to send him a nice giveaway.
Yeah.
Kind of the package that was waiting outside my doorstep was really it kind of became an exciting thing to open your door and see a package. And so again, I think that's something that we started seeing during the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful insight, and certainly acting with empathy and really kind of balancing, finding that through greater levels of that at times by using technology is also interesting, right?
Yeah.
But I think that allows us to perhaps move into another area, which is as as we've all been going through this, we've been wrestling with our own personal challenges. It's been a challenging moment. How have you been staying sane and finding meaning and joy through this whole period?
So, I find myself fortunate. Again, I'm based in the Bay Area. There's lots of outdoor areas. We have a huge backyard. And so kind of the way that I thought about, this period is, it could have been worse. I could have been cramped in, a small apartment, or being based in some area that doesn't have enough outdoor, place for us to go through. And so again, I just kept thinking about the positive side of things, and thought about this experience as a time to reconnect with the family, spend some more time with my kids, definitely the volume of work has, surprisingly increased, and I find myself more and more hours on Zoom, and kind of the line between work and family has blurred a little bit. But then at the same time, my kids were home, and so, every now and then I would take an hour break and I would go have lunch with them. Again, things that when I was in the office, I probably didn't have a chance to do, and they would be in school. So again, I try to focus on the positive side of things.
No, I can see that. I mean, look, I think many people would probably want to be in Israel right now. I've been told that everyone already has the vaccine there. It seems like a great place to be right now. But
Yeah.
but we need you here to help companies with these challenges. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on going forward for the future. I mean, 21 has big plans. Weka has big plans. Other businesses that clearly you touch in the early stage venture stage are developing. How do you see things going in the back half of the year for these companies in terms of growth and tactics and ideas that they may be employing?
Yeah, so first of all, comment about 21. I think the pandemic really highlighted the era of digital and online that we're in, and so again, you see, who would have thought 18 months ago that teaching would be done through Zoom, and when you think about restaurants, they became much more dependent on tools like or services like DoorDash, and the commerce has shifted to online more than ever. I mean, you literally for months you couldn't go into a store, and so the only way these stores would make money is is through the online and digital experience. And so so many of the companies that I work with today at 21, they've shifted their business model overnight, which means that they quickly needed to release new digital products, adapt their mobile experience, and develop new apps also to support the remote work style that that they're in. And so think about the productivity loss of an app that didn't work properly, or the revenues lost when if DoorDash app was crashing. And so again, I feel lucky enough that we're essentially supporting the need to accelerate the development cycle, but also reassuring the customer experience. So it's a great place to be, and a great
I mean,
product to offer.
I love the space that you play in, Shani, and I mean, I think about the journey that I've been on personally, where you start to sell a product and then you try to figure out ways to scale it, and you try to capture those learnings and apply it, and certain things work and then they stop working, and then you have to find other things, and it's such a complex area that is only going to grow in complexity. I don't know how the whole Google cookieless thing impacts your world, but I know that for a lot of marketers, that's a big challenge, and it looks like we're facing another big step forward now in rethinking.
Yeah, correct. And then the other thing that I would say is, kind of more broadly, I think that the last 12 months or so forced us to be much more focused on what we do, who we target, etc. And I think that's actually a good thing. And so I hope that moving forward, even if the pandemic is over, we're still going to stay focused on the channels for which we market, the activities that we do, which activities actually bring ROI and which don't, and keep measuring those. And also focus on the right set of segments. I think that's again that forced many companies in the last 12 months to kind of shift their thinking, and I hope that they leverage that to stay focused moving forward.
Yeah, no, I like that sentiment. Really, I'd say what you're advocating is using that data more intelligently to be more effective and more efficient with your marketing. And I think it's a positive message, and it's critical now for all digital marketers, all omni-channel commerce players, that are playing with these new sets of data and really trying to develop probably their own first party data that they can utilize as well. Shani, thank you so much for joining us today on the Uncaged show. We've been talking to Shani Shoham. He is the Chief Executive Officer of 21. He is also the Chief Operating Officer of Weka. Shani has been providing us the secrets of early stage growth and sales, and it's been extremely illuminating and valuable, and certainly something that every early stage company needs to learn, get better at, and then ultimately scale. So thank you so much, Shani. If people would like to reach you, where should they find you?
Oh, very easy. Shani at 21labs.io, Twitter, Shoham S, and my LinkedIn.
Great. That's excellent. Shani, thank you again so much for being on the show. Shani's been talking to us today, as I mentioned, about early stage growth, sales, and marketing. He's been a great guest to have on Uncaged, which is a program that provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. As we've made that shift to the digital world in an aggressive, accelerated way over the last 12 months, we need to learn how to apply all these great things that Shani's been talking to us. So thanks again, Shani.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.